Hello and welcome back to Hot Seat with Anna. And today I have a very special guest for you. Her name is Zaslansky Conner. She's the founder of ZAZ Business Solutions. And basically, she is a fractional COO. And we will get to grill her today. Welcome, Lauren.
Thank you, Anna. Great to be here.
Lauren, we are freezing here in South Florida today. Yesterday, we were on a mission to rescue frozen iguanas that get stunned and falling off the trees. So that's what I spent my weekend doing. How about yourself?
I'm cleaning out my household. I'm actually starting a big household renovation coming up.
Ooh.
So starting to clean that out and then working with my son on this big project he has to do. So spent the whole day yesterday working on a podcast, actually a podcast application that he's doing, and he's 17.
Ah,
Yeah,
awesome. Love it. So you're well prepared today.
well,
So
exactly.
speaking of freezing, you are a fractional COO. Tell us what it is. Many people don't know what a fractional COO is, and I'm still finding out as well myself.
Yeah. So fractional COO is someone who comes in and works hand in hand with an owner or a founder and helps tie together the different departments or other leaders that generally report to the founder or owner. So often when somebody is running a business, they have everyone reporting to them and that could lead to burnout, that could lead to them trying to make every decision themselves. A fractional COO can come in and help relieve some of that load but doesn't necessarily have to be there a full-time employee, doesn't need to come in and put a heavy load on their payroll. They can come in sort of opportunistically and help relieve pressure off the founder.
That sounds good. And I'm sure everyone claims they need a COO. But how do you spot founders who want real operational help as opposed to those who want a babysitter for their cows?
Yeah, so somebody who wants an actual COO is able to slow down and looking for somebody who can help them change their own behavior as well. They don't say, I need you to just fix the problem, and they don't want to be involved. I like to work with people who want to be part of the solution. So um, they're willing they're open to feedback.
Hmm.
They understand that meaningful change requires that they have to give up some control. And that it requires some wiggle room, even if it's gradual. So, we'll come in, we together earn each other's trust and the trust of the team there. So slowly and surely, some of that power does move away from the owner into the hands of other people on the team.
So it sounds that this solution is mostly not for startups, but for businesses that start scaling and developing and start encountering first issues, operational issues. What do you think is the most common lie that founders tell themselves about their operations once their revenue passes these six figures?
So you're completely right. A fractional COO, at least the way I like to work, is once they're past that startup phase, right? They're a little further along. There's a team, or they've been around a really long time, actually, and they're thinking about selling or scaling at a different level. Those lies that they tell themselves, they say this mess is temporary. I hear a lot, I'll get to hiring somebody once I get through this insert problem here. Once sales go up, once I figure out what's going on, we'll clean this up later. But how is it going to change unless they bring someone in there to help? So when they're at that six figures, cracks feel manageable, but at seven figures, those cracks start to really dictate the strategy. I say that they delay decisions, but those delayed decisions are decisions themselves.
Thank you. So fractional COO sounds very kind of clean cut, very polite, professional. I'm sure the reality is different. So what mess usually waits for you on day one when you step inside a new business?
So one of the things I like to say is that everyone says, this is how it's been done, and you say, well, why? And it's a lot of, well, this is how we do it. So that often belies a kind of a bigger mess below it. They fear the question, so that's kind of they don't want to be asked the questions. So sometimes it's sort of a slow leak that's been normalized. The analogy is like the broken step that everyone walks around,
Mm,
and when a new person walks in, they trip
mm.
because they didn't know about that broken step. So that's the type of thing that I'll see a lot. There's something broken, and everyone's just sort of accepted it because it's been a small team. And when they start to hire someone new, they trip on that proverbial step.
Interesting. I love this analogy. I actually can think of a broken step in my own company right now, so it needs to start working on fixing it. Along, there are a lot of research studies nowadays, and in the last have been conducted in the last few decades, that proves that culture, corporate culture, really matters, even in a small company. So what do you see leaders quietly, where do you see leaders quietly breaking down trust while they think actually they are protecting culture?
Oh, yeah, this is one of my favorite questions. Thanks for asking. So I'm going to talk about three different things here. One is this kind of the hurry up and break things mentality, which has kind of been normalized, especially in Silicon Valley. This creates burnout, repeat mistakes.
Mhm,
They don't have time to learn from what worked and what didn't. There's this sort of, I say it's almost like an allergy to looking back. And
mhm,
so there's no, it's like, let's just keep going. That's one that's rushing. Number two is protection. There's the one person who they feel like may not be doing their job right, and everyone's kind of working around them. And instead of either talking to them and figuring out what's wrong, or maybe there's a system problem, everyone kind of makes up for that, right? So it's not necessarily at a startup, but it could be a relative or somebody they're trying to protect. But what they're doing is they're actually quietly disenfranchising maybe other people on the team. And that happens I see that very often. There'll be somebody who's kind of being protected, but they're actually really hurting the culture around them. And then the last is this burnout by example. We have vacation policy, but nobody seems to use it because the boss is always online. And when the
mhm,
boss is always online, nobody feels that they can actually be offline.
mhm,
And that, if you want to, I would say, if you want to scale, if you want to raise money, if you want to sell, you must be able to take a vacation.
mhm.
And if you take a vacation, you need to normalize that. And you need to be able to have your team take a vacation. And by the way, those great ideas will happen when you turn your brain off. So the burnout by example is a culture killer, 100%.
Thank you. Well, guilty as charged for myself. As a CEO, CEOs focus more on the how. In the EOS terms, and my company runs on the EOS system,
Yep.
it would be the integrator as opposed to
Yep.
the visionary. So what part of that integration, what part of execution do leaders avoid? Because it exposes their weak decision making.
Yeah, for me, it's that prioritization, right? You have a list of all these great ideas. And I'll start with, let's do an assessment. Let's talk about what you want to do. And now that really hard part, let's put this in order.
Mm,
I often say, it's sort of this always managing up. Great, I'm happy to work on this for you. What do you need me to deprioritize in order to put that up front? So leaders love ideas and they hate choosing which things need to move off the list or later in the list. And when you have a tremendous team, you can farm out numbers 10, 11, and 12. But when you have a small team, you need to decide this is first, this is second, this is third. And that's really, really hard. It's this or that. It's not, something in the middle. So that's
You know what? It starts sounding more and more like I need a fractional CEO, or
happy
actually,
to
I'd
talk.
love to work with you.
Mm,
But I think especially with smaller businesses, when you are not a huge company yet, and I think founders have this emotional investment, emotional attachment to their company, which is great in terms of motivation,
yeah.
but it leads to kind of emotionally charged decisions and environments. And
Mhm,
I know that it's your job to walk in and work calmly in those emotionally charged environments.
mhm.
What emotional behavior from founders slows growth the
Yeah.
most, in your opinion?
It says reacting instead of deciding, right? So I have worked with a lot of emotional founders, and I remember anger is an emotion. It's when we know that external environmental changes can impact your business, but your vision and mission should stay relatively stable.
Mhm,
So if things are changing like the wind every time an announcement comes out, stop and think. And if the team has to manage the leader's moods, they're spending a lot of time worrying about that.
mhm,
That also means they're spending a lot of time trying to figure out like what the right time is to come in with a message. They're
mhm,
spending a lot of time making the presentation look right so they don't get,
mhm,
thrown out of the meeting. Think about how much time that takes and how much wasted time that is versus, hey, I have this really great idea. What do you think? Because if
mhm,
if if they can just say that and like move on, you'll hear a lot more. So in order to grow, they need a consistent leader that they kind of know what they're going to get. And if you are having a bad day, we all have that, right? We all have major life things happening. That's okay. You're allowed to say, this is a rough time. Like I need to bow out, right? Remember the vacation thing a few questions ago, but also bad day, doctor's appointment, mom's sick. We hear this all the time. Take the
mhm,
time.
mhm,
If you can't handle it, that's okay. It's not
mhm,
weak to do it, but I see this. Don't let that mean that your whole team has to absorb your moods,
mhm.
and I see that a lot.
Thank you. Um, I think it's very typical for small business owners, really,
Yeah.
where they are kind of jack of all trades. I know, however, is that before you started working with smaller and growing
Mhm.
companies, your
Yeah.
background also includes working for Disney, which
Yeah.
is rather impressive, I think. And I just watched the Disney movie yesterday, Zootopia 2. which-
Oh, so good, right?
Oh, which is
So
absolutely
good.
different. Like this term just stuck with me. I went to watch it with my fiance, and the
Uh-huh.
rabbit says, "You're my fluffle," which is a family of rabbits, and we just laughed it. So he now calls me his fluffle.
Oh my
Love it,
God. I loved it. I love the first one. I love the second one. So good.
adorable. So thinking about kind of comparing larger companies, larger brands, and smaller businesses, what habits from large companies, corporates, fail instantly inside a small business?
Yeah, I think for me, it's they assume these process means that everyone's aligned. They assume that like if it's in the documentation, it's true. When a company is small, but even medium-sized businesses that have been around a long time, they're not going in there and updating the processes every few weeks, right? They're growing fast when things are changing. And so I find when I go in, a lot of times there's a misalignment between what the processes are and what's really happening. And
Mhm.
so to me, just relying on what the documents say or what the policies are and not actually reality testing, that's a big, for me, that's where things fall apart a lot. So reality wins. Let's find out what's actually happening. And don't pass judgment. It's not, people always, oh, well, I know I'm supposed to do that. I said, I understand what you're supposed to do. What are you actually doing? Right. And you find out things like, I'm supposed to be putting things into the system, but what I'm really doing is putting into the spreadsheet because I don't know how the system works, right? I hear that a lot, right? Right. Or I'm scared of the system, so I still need to do it in this ledger before whatever system we're talking about, right? And so in big systems, in big companies, there'll be a training process, hopefully, right? There's some word, but in a little company, they'll be like keeping it in some little notebook and no one will
Yeah.
know until you start to really ask.
Yeah, no, that's true. I've seen it. We actually had to abandon Zoho Enterprise because I introduced it. And my training for my team was go online and view videos on how to use Zoho. Half a year later, no one was using Zoho. Everyone went back to old spreadsheets, and I realized it was my failure completely, and I had no one else to blame, which was not a good situation to be in. But in general, I think as someone with a EOS background and German, we believe that systems
Oh.
promise clarity. Everything
Mhm.
is about SOPs, procedures, it ensures consistency, transparency, manages expectations. At what point do you feel systems start hiding accountability
Yeah.
instead of improving results?
Yeah, I see this where people blame the system instead of understanding it.
Mm,
Your example, your Zoho example is very, very, very common, right? People say, and there is a cultural element to this. I see this. I was part of this SAP integration years ago. I was like one of the subject matter experts, and there is this sort of Eastern European. The Eastern Europeans loved it. The Americans hated it, right?
mm,
There is a process, so you have to make sure people understand what's happening. So for me, if the systems don't match how the work is actually happening, um, and if people an actual system, an actual dashboard still requires curiosity. It still requires people talking about the numbers, right?
mm,
So just because you have a dashboard, just because somebody was sent information, just because the numbers are there, does not mean they're looking at them, they're talking about them, they're acting on them.
mm.
So I say, this is with any sort of data, right? You have to get the data, you have to compile the data, somebody has to analyze the data, you have to talk about the data,
Mm.
and then you have to act upon the data. Very, very rarely do I see a small or medium-sized company that has gone through that whole process.
I don't know why. This interview is supposed to make you feel bad about taking people's money. Now I feel you have all the right to get paid for what you do, and I should feel bad for not having all these systems in place.
No bad,
You are
no.
very good explaining what you do, I have to say. Thank you for
Thank you.
that. Um, Now moving on from systems to people, and that's
Yeah.
always a tough decision. Personally, I'm more of a systems person rather than a people's person.
Uh-huh.
So with clients, with friends, they very much experience me as someone who is a people's person. I much prefer spreadsheet,
Mhm.
strategy, documents, and sitting down with people,
Yeah.
motivating them, getting them on board internally. So I'm definitely not a CEO material, I think. Um, so think about composition of your team. At what point should a business stop hiring more specialists and actually start investing more into operational leadership to make sure people are well led and well motivated and everything is well aligned?
Yeah. I think specialists are good when you're tiny, right? you'll always need specialists to do certain things.
Mhm.
But when no one is connecting the dots between them, you need people to do that, right? So specialists don't wrangle themselves. In many cases, I mean, I come in and I help manage agencies or these different specialists because
Mhm.
someone needs to be integrating across. And I mentioned for data, you have these different pieces. So you'll have a bookkeeper who's looking at, all of the sales and all of the expenses. You'll have somebody maybe doing social media for you, and you might have a sales agency. Well, those things feel very different. And many companies, those are coming from completely different places. Somebody like me can come in and say, let's make sense of those things. And when you start to talk about those, they're not completely different things, right? The sales are coming from, or they're being driven by the marketing activities that are happening in one side, and you're tracking them based on what's you're learning from the bookkeeper. So the bookkeeper does not never talks to the marketing agency, but
Yeah.
somebody needs to know how the numbers are working, right? So yes, a dashboard is fine. It's pretty. It looks. I love a good dashboard. Don't get me started on a pretty dashboard. But if there's nobody who can make the connections to say it looks like the thing we did last month is
Mhm.
driving something over here, and we
Mhm.
should maybe do more of that. You need somebody to do that, right? And you
Mhm.
may not need a full-time body in there to like manage everybody, but you do
Mhm.
need somebody who's going to start to connect the dots, and you probably need somebody at a powerful enough level to be able to say, "Hey, you, like, let's try that," or be able to pick up the phone and actually instigate some change there.
Mhm.
So, does that make sense?
Yep. Um, kind of, I'll actually use my last question on something else.
Yeah.
You share something exciting, I think. Can you share one client moment where everything looked fine on paper, everything looked
hmm
good, everyone is calm, but behind the scenes, everything was falling apart? And what fixed it? Was it you or someone else, or any new ideas, or?
Yeah, well, sure. One client I have, I mean, I came in and it looks, you see growth. You see growth on Amazon, you see great product, you see great reviews. And then when you get inside, you get inside the house and you say, oh, what do your numbers look like? And you can't kind of, for me, I start with the P&L, and the P&L doesn't look, it's on paper, but it's not, it's like I can't really tell what's going on. So first I start with let's try to figure out what this financial picture is, by item, by account. So let's try to understand what's happening. So I kind of dig into that. My background is finance and marketing and sales. I've done all of these things. So let's sort of drill into this so we can actually get the story of the business, right? And then once we understand the story of the business, we move into let's look at the items. And so the next thing we did is we focused on the items that were actually the most profitable. So we dropped some items. So we had to take a little bit of a dip. We pulled some items off that were not as profitable,
Mhm.
um, and dropped some projects and dropped some agencies that weren't driving kind of
Mhm.
immediate profitability, right? So within a year, we, I think, 5x revenue, kind of gross revenue, while expenses doubled, right? So our profitability just really turned around by
Mhm.
focusing the efforts on these products that were really working. And you
Mhm.
can't tell that at the like macro level,
Mhm.
right? So when I look, what I think about is you have to look big and you have to go detailed, and then you have to go big and then you have to go detailed.
Mhm.
It's you don't necessarily know what the problem is from 50,000 feet away. You kind of have to dig into the little details, and it's fine tuning and then course tuning. And so that's kind of for me, that's something that I really enjoy doing. And people don't
Mhm.
necessarily, when I come in, I don't necessarily know why, what the
What you?
problem is. I have to kind of tinker.
I love it. How did you become a fractional COO? What's the story?
Yeah. So, as you mentioned earlier, I worked at Disney. I worked at very large companies, and went to smaller and smaller businesses. I was a co-founder after working in products my whole career. I took a detour during COVID. I was actually a co-founder of a virtual funeral and memorial business,
Oh.
which was very different. But you talked about emotions
Mm.
earlier, and talked about culture. And one of the things that I was able to do there is really dig into developing my own culture,
Mhm.
with my friend, my co-founder, and it was amazing, right? I was no longer kind of at the mercy of somebody else developing a culture that didn't feel right. And I realized that I really, enjoyed being a leader, which I always knew, but that sense of that I can tweak and make cultures that just matter.
Mm.
And so when I sold that business, I had a choice, right? Kind of corporate another startup or going out on my own. And I felt that I can really make a difference in helping people combine this analytical piece with this humanity piece. Um, and that's kind of, was introduced to the world of fractional.
Mhm.
I'm doing other things as well, but this is something that, it really speaks to me kind of in a variety of ways.
Mm, thank you. Lauren, what are, last question, I promise.
That's
What are the three things people don't know about you?
ooh,
Mm-hmm.
well, I
You
just
want me to steal your secrets?
so I just gave you my funeral thing. That's something that a lot of people don't know about me.
Mhm.
Let's say. Well, I guess on a personal level, this past year, I got certified. This is very on the parenting side. I've been certified as an independent facilitator. I'm helping parents
Mm,
navigate special needs services through it's through the government in California, this regional center. So that is something that I'm actually interested in starting a sort of another side business to do
mhm,
in the coming months.
mhm.
So that's one thing. So I'm an independent facilitator certified. Very few people know that actually.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Uh, One thing that some people know, but not that many people, I quit my very first job after college. And that has actually made one of the biggest differences, I think, in my career. I approach jobs, and I was never a quitter. I was a rule follower to the T. And I quit my first job after college. And I think about that almost every day. I'm here by choice. There's always something else that you can do. And every time I was in a bad job situation, it was like, okay, I could leave, but I could not. And I'm here for a reason. Um,
Mhm.
and I believe that everyone should do that at some point. Um, Other things. I would say most
Give
days,
us one more, one
one
more.
more.
Maybe you're a
Most
secret chicken breeder, or I don't know.
I would say most days, I have probably a fair amount of dog hair all over me because I have two very rambunctious, one Australian Shepherd and one sort of crazy Australian Shepherdy mix, rolling all over me most of the time. So that is most of the
That's a
time.
beautiful breed. Very smart Australian Shepherd. A friend
One
of
of
mine.
them's very smart, one of them not so much, but don't tell him I told you that. Um,
Well, they're good looking. That
yeah.
compensates. You
Yes,
know.
yeah, no, my Aussie is very smart. The other guy is just, he's a playmate.
Fair enough. Well, thanks so much, Lauren, for
Thanks,
spending
Anna.
some time with us today. It was a pleasure interviewing and grilling you. Hopefully, it wasn't too bad. Definitely learned some new things today, which is always good and pleasure. And yeah, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me. Really a pleasure.